Hi, all. This is Daugherty, host of the Untethered Truth podcast. Before we begin today's episode, I wanted to share something important with you. This conversation was recorded last month, and during our editing and post-production process, we learned that our guest tragically lost her brother. We reached out to ask whether she wanted to still have us air this episode, and she said yes, and wanted this episode to be aired and her story to be heard. And so we wanted to honor her and the memory of our guest's brother and dedicate this episode to Latrell Mitchell Cooper. We ask that also you hold her family in your thoughts and prayers as they grieve and celebrate his life later this month. Thank you for listening with open and compassionate hearts. Welcome to Untethered to Rooted, a podcast that brings you a collection of stories around grief, healing, and identity. Hear from everyday people how grief and loss shape their identity and how their identity shapes the way they heal and process grief. I'm your host, Daugherty, a licensed psychotherapist with extensive experience dealing with grief, both personally and professionally. And if you want to hear stories with gems and practical tools for healing, stay tuned for more. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Untethered to Rooted. Today we'll be exploring rest and ambition coexisting with grief. Our guest is a high achiever and high performer, and so a big question is, what does that mean when loss comes into your life and grief forces you to slow down, check in with yourself, and rebalance in a way that forces you to shift and have to acknowledge grief's impact on you? For our guest, she realized she had to listen to her body, reestablish her boundaries with herself and with others, and commit to the promises and new ways of being she needed to be in to navigate life. Specifically for Quanna Cooper, she knew that her value of getting outside her comfort zone and traveling helped her to heal, and didn't want to lead with her wounds, but with her healing. Quanna lost her mom several years ago, and her connection with traveling is deeply connected with her connection with her mom, and she also found that this is deeply spiritual, and it forced her to trust herself more and shed old ways of being. She knew that individuals can identify with needing spaces to process, connect with themselves and their emotions, learn tools to navigate emotions and also their grief. Therefore, she wanted to offer retreats so people could have safe places to land, get outside their comfort zones, and lean in to connect with community and doing work to reroute themselves. And so, by way of introduction, Quanna Cooper is the founder of Poised Wellness Retreats, a biotech professional by day and wellness entrepreneur creating restorative experiences that honor cultural identity, intentional rest, and the balance between movement and stillness. She is also a spin and certified Legree instructor who knows firsthand that taking care of yourself isn't a luxury. It's the foundation for how we lead, live, and show up for our communities. Also, personal note, Quanna is a friend, and we met through a grief group, a mutual friend who has also been on this podcast. Hi, Jen Bunder, who co-facilitated this group with me, and we formed a deep connection and bond in a space where we needed for community and a space that we also needed for healing. So welcome, Quanna, and I'm so glad that you're here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So just starting us off, I'm always like my guests to sort of position themselves and their being here. And so I'm wondering for you, what are some identities that are important to you?
I say the number one identity that's important to me is mother, being a mother. I'm a mother to a 28-year-old daughter, and then I have a 25-year-old son. So that's the number one identity that I love to stand firm on is that. I would say a woman of balance, because I wear many hats, and I like to be looked at as a woman who could balance those things and juggle them. Also a leader. Doesn't matter where I'm at. I'm leading with intention, with open heart and open mind. That's what I like to identify with. And lastly, just a Black woman. I'm a Black woman at the end of the day, so I have the struggles of the world on my back. And so how do I balance those and not lead with the woman of those struggles? So that's what I identify with.
Thank you so much for sharing all those aspects of yourself, and I know that probably other pieces of your identity will come out as we continue on. I know I'm curious, like, what's your connection with this topic today? I know we talked about actually grief being part of this and just balancing. So yeah, what's your connection with this topic today, and how is grief even relevant for you?
For me, well, I lost my sister 13 years ago. My sister was murdered 13 years ago, and I lost my mother 7 years ago. So grief is just something I've been really navigating grief, I could say, since I was a child, but really identifying and trying to navigate it in a positive way so that I can be the best human that I can be. So that's how I connected here. And then just figuring out ways, how am I navigating this grief and still being able to keep a smile on my face at the end of the day, and still be of joy. And that's what's just connecting me to this
Yeah.
podcast and to you. And that's how we
Yeah,
met through
I
grief group.
know, right? I think yeah, just our grief group had so many stories, and I think I said this maybe a little bit earlier when we were prepping for this, but I know that we entered that grief group at a time where grief was especially fresh for both of us, and so yeah, I'm just wondering about the identities that you shared, motherhood, all these different pieces. How from that grief group, even up until now, how have those identities sort of influenced how you process grief?
Yeah. I would say, like, just from being a mother, just the nurturing part of myself, of having my children and then navigating, having to be a mother to my children and still be a child who lost her mother. Of how did I balance those things? Because at the time of my mother passing away, and my children were very well connected because I traveled so much for work. They were very well connected with my mother. So how can I still be the mother that I needed to be, but also needed to be the little girl that I need to be to grieve my mother? So thinking about that, right? Connecting that to being a mother. So thinking about to the balance. So how do I balance that? And how did those identities come together? Just being a mother at the time of losing my mother, me being a mother, I have to know how to still be a mother, but still be able to be a
Yes.
child grieving my mother. So
Mm.
being able to balance that was like a struggle for me, a big time struggle for me. So just trying to figure out, how do I do that? And then just being a woman of balance and
Mm.
wearing many different hats, and how am I going to balance this grief, balance being a mother, balance being a child that has lost her mother, and still do the things that I needed to do to thrive. And what happened to me is that I had to be able to learn how to process that pain without, putting aside all the things I still loved,
Mm.
without not showing up and being a mother to my children. And I had to know how to do that. And movement was something that I had to lean into. And I was already like a workout person, but movement and traveling is what saved me. And still, I was still
Mm.
able to keep those identities without
Yeah.
losing myself to the grief, if that makes any
Yeah, I
sense.
was gonna. It does. I mean, I was gonna ask you, like, how did you get to expand on that? Like, how did you balance that? Because I imagine the listeners that are on here who might also be in a similar position, right?
Hmm.
And who might increasingly become in this position as we're part of this sandwich generation, right? Of like losing our parents and our caregivers while also being a caregiver, and how do you balance that? So I'm curious just to know, like, how did movement, how did traveling help you to balance
Balance
that?
it. Yeah. You know, when I lost my mother, I didn't know that my mother had actually passed away while I was on a plane. I just know that on February 14th, 2019, I was on a plane. My daughter called me, and I was just full of so many emotions at that moment. And tears like rolling down my face. And my daughter's like, "Why are you crying?" And I've always loved travel, but travel has truly connected me to the loss of my mother in a form of communication. It's a spiritual level that I can't explain. And my mother was always the type that, we will always say when we left on the phone, we've been very intentional from the get, especially when with me losing my sister before my mother had passed away. It's kind of weird to even say she kind of prepped me to kind of navigate it on a deeper level of dealing with the loss of my mother. But my mother was always big of, we don't say bye, we always say see you later. And so I got to be able to have those healthy conversations with my mother. So once I found out my mother was had passed away, I knew that every time I got on a plane, I got so freaking emotional. And I didn't know
Wow.
what that was, of just looking out the window and get teary eyed. And I traveled a ton for work as it is, but I knew that this was a way that I had to lean into whatever this was trying to give me. And my mother
Mm.
wasn't a woman who got to travel the world and do all these different things. And at first I would try to take a little bit of her with me because I got my mother cremated and just release a little bit of her wherever I went. And I haven't done that in a while. I know it sounds creepy, but there
No,
was
I mean, I
something
was
that
gonna
was
ask you
there.
about rituals, though. That
Yes.
sounds like a
There was
good
something
ritual.
that was there, and I traveling was my way of dealing with my grief. Why? It helped me get out of my comfort zone. I had to shake up myself, prepare myself for whatever I was going to be embraced with, whatever country I was going to explore, or whatever adventure. And that I knew whatever I had to do when I was traveling, I had to come in with an open heart, mind. I had to lean into the moment. So it's like, oh, this is not fancy enough for me. No, I am going to live in swimsuits for 7 days. I'm not going to comb my hair. It's going to be all over my head. And I know that that's all I'm going to do is sunbathe and have a freaking margarita. That's what I'm doing. And so I would stick to that plan in regards
Yeah.
of whatever I was supposed to gain from that travel. And I just knew within those times of the traveling, Dana, is that I dream the most about my mother. It's the most weirdest thing. I just got back from Mexico with my sisters, and every night, I had a dream of my mother. Down to me even being able to talk about her outfit. So I woke up one day and I was like, gosh, that was kind of an odd dream. And I'm like, what? It's like my mother again. And she was like peeking around the corner. She had her purse in her, and she was a very stylish woman because that's a part of my identity that I get from her as well. And she had her red Chuck Taylors on. And she was always to the T, and her hair was pulled back in ponytail, and she had a purse on her shoulder, and she just peeked around the corner and she smiled. And that's all I got from it. And I thought, okay, she's telling me she's here. And I don't know why, but traveling just keeps me so connected to her. I dream about her the most when I'm somewhere else and I'm not home, which is quite interesting. And maybe that's just her saying, "Hey, I'm here. I came along with you. Have a good time."
Yeah,
So,
I love that. I love that interpretation of it. And honestly, I feel like, Laquan, I feel like you and I share that, of like our love
yes,
of travel, and you and I feel like we're always on a plane somewhere.
yeah,
But I feel like you're right. Like it's like this connection and, because of my additional love of like sci-fi and time
hmm
travel and the way that, I've said this a lot where grief has shifted completely the way that I look at time. I just look at time
for
differently with
sure.
you. And so when you're in a plane and you're crossing all these time zones and like it's time bendy and then like you're outside of time and you're sort of like outside of space a
Yeah,
little bit. Like
yeah,
you're not in your regular on the ground space. You're like way up to
mm-mm.
that like way in the air. And so yeah, everything kind of gets like shifted in this kind of
Yeah,
time and space bending time. So
yeah,
it makes a lot of sense to me why
yeah.
travel is connected with grief, and that resonates deeply for me as someone whose mom also loved to travel, but also was just sort of her. Well, my mom loved to travel. I know you said your mom didn't travel, and so you're honoring her through this
Yeah,
connection, but yeah, I know that just, yeah, being able to feel that connection is so important to leaning into processing the grief feelings too.
yeah, yeah, for sure. It's kind of, I don't know. I feel too when I'm on the plane. I'm like in this different. So I start getting too deep, right? You start thinking you have the blessing to be able to first of all book a trip to travel. So you think about that and you say, oh, how honored it is for me to be able to have the blessing to do that. Then you're like, I'm in
Mm,
the air, I'm flying somewhere else. Like, how is that even possible? So I feel like when you're dealing with grief or dealing with loss, you start every little thing matters, and it might be a little
yeah.
super deep to others, but you start thinking about even to the smallest things of you being able to start your car up and you're like, God is good, thank you, my car starts up. You know what I mean? You just start honoring all these other things that you just didn't pay attention to because it makes you really realize that these things are possible and you can still keep on going and you don't have to sit in the sadness. You can still smile, you can still be full of joy, but you just have to know, how do you navigate that and what does that look like to you? And what does that feel like to you? Because that's going to look different from everybody. It's going to feel different from everybody. And I just feel like you have to honor that. So, how do you find that balance? And I will keep moving my body. I will keep leading. I will keep demonstrating that you could still live in this chaotic world and be ambitious and it can still coexist with rest. And I will still do that because I feel like once you recenter yourself and you truly get in tuned with your stillness, then you're like, yo, I gotta live in these moments. How do I navigate that?
Yes.
And you
Yes.
embrace it. So
Mm,
that's
I love
just
that.
it's kind of it's full circle. I think people, they lose sight of it because there's so much in the emotion and the heaviness of the heart that they sit too long in that space. And I was telling you about this, about setting a cap on it. And there's friends that I will talk to who would get like sad and start, they'll cry, and you are allowed to cry. I'm never one to tell anyone to not cry. You could cry, but my allotment is you could sit in those tears and that sadness and that slumber 5 minutes, baby girl. And after that, you open up the cap. It's time to get busy. Let's go. What's next? Because if we sit there too long, Dana, we're going to be sitting there all day. You're going to be in the bed watching TV or sci-fi all day long. So you got to put a time cap
Girl.
on it.
Yeah, and I was. I mean, like, yeah, everybody has, it's so funny because everybody does have their own process of grief. And it's funny hearing you be like, I got 5 minutes and that's what it is. And then
That's
we got to keep
it.
it moving, but
Right.
it's funny, I heard my mother's voice as you were saying this because one of the things she told me, maybe I think it was the month before she died, one of the things she said was, I hope that you don't grieve for too long. Like, don't grieve me too long.
Ooh.
And it was just like actually such a blessing to get that gift of release from her to say,
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't grieve me too long. And then I had to qualify because I was like, I don't want to ask the question, what do you mean, like after you're gone? So I was like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you mean in the moment? So I was like, what do you mean,
Yeah.
mom? And she was just like, yeah, don't grieve for me too long. I know I grieved my mom for too long and I just was stuck in it and I couldn't get out of it. I just felt stuck. And she was stuck in it for 7 years, like for a long time. And
Mm-hmm.
like for some people, that is the time that it takes, And so it's no knocking that. But for herself, she was like, that was too long for me to be so stuck
Yeah.
in the acuteness of it. And she was like, my wish for you in my parting is that you wouldn't stay too stuck in it, that you would also lean into living. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what you're talking about, too. So,
Yeah, and it's
yeah.
funny that your mother said that to you when she was alive. Because the week of my mother passing away, Dana, I was first of all traveling. Once again, I had to be to my mother. I came back to Seattle. My mother had been deceased for 5 days. I found her. She wasn't answering the phone. Go to our house. She had been on her sofa deceased for 5 days. So, long story short, is that I had to clean out her apartment, get her out of her apartment. They gave me an 8. Like people, like when it comes to the business of this world, they're, oh well, you got 3 days. So I had to have her out, but
Yeah.
I had to be in Charlotte for work that Monday, and my boss was like, you get you wait, we get like 3 bereavement days. You know what I mean?
That's
So
its own top. I mean, let's talk about it because I'm like, that's its own topic, and I have a bone to pick with corporate America
right,
about that.
exactly. It's like you have 3 bereavement days. So it's crazy because that week my mother had passed away. I kid you not. And I didn't, when I have found my mother, I didn't cry. Because I've always been the one that I have had to keep my composure. I had to let
Mhm,
everybody know what was going on. I'm the oldest of 4 of my mother's
mhm,
children. And then life is just different with Coopers. That's all I'm going to say. So my mother came, sat on the edge of my bed. And at the edge of my bed, in a very stern tone, I heard in my dream was, what are you crying for? I am not going anywhere. And I woke up out of my dream and I was like, what was that all about? So I will give her honor that she is the one who told me you're gonna get up and still do your movement in the morning, because I was doing those 5 a.m. movements down at AF. You're gonna still get up and
yeah.
go do your half marathon. So and you're gonna still be a mom to these kids. So no matter what, she was still telling me what I needed to do while she was gone. And so from there, I just feel so settled. Like I feel so settled. Even with me dreaming of her, I feel so
Mhm.
settled. And there's times when I am leading and I'm coaching a spin and I'm on that bike and I'm talking on that podium. I always let the individuals who are taking my classes like, baby, I'm not only just talking to you. these words that are coming out of my mouth, I'm speaking to myself because obviously I needed those words today. And it's a reminder to myself. So, what I need for us to always believe at the end of the day is that when we're navigating grief, Dana, it's almost like when you're in the plane, they say, for the adults, you put your oxygen mask on first and you can help everybody else out. Who am I to be a mother to my children if I can't save myself first? If I'm still living in my grief as this little girl losing her mother, and then I can't be the adult that I need to be to raise my children, then what am I doing? So I had to put my oxygen mask on. And that was just figuring out how am I going to navigate it. I'm going to travel this world. I'm going to keep traveling this world. I'm going to learn new things about me. There's things I don't like that I feel like the grief is dragging me in. I'm going to shed it like a snake. I'm going to keep doing my movement because that's very important to me. And another thing too is like I mentioned to you before is that learning to say no. Nah, that's not going to serve me today. And it's funny because my sister, she got on me one day and she asked me to do something. I said, nah, that's not going to work. And then she said, you don't have to be such a jerk. And it's like, you took it as me being a jerk, but it's just a no for me. So it's okay to say no, nah, nah, nope, nope, nah, it's not going to work for me. And for people not to feel upset about it. It's a me thing, not a you thing. I ain't doing it because I'm trying to navigate whatever I'm going through within that moment. And I am not going to be the good self to myself or to you if I don't put my oxygen mask on. So it might be that moment when
Yeah.
I'm saying no to you. I'm not saying no because I'm being just this mean person. I'm saying no because you know what? I'm at my capacity right now. I'm in my emotions right now. I need to honor
Yes.
that. I need to
Yes.
navigate that. Let me find
Yeah.
myself. Let me come back up to breathe. And then I could be who I need to be to you. I'm
Yes.
doing what feels
Yes.
good to this person. I have to. So we just gotta
Yeah.
learn how to navigate that and be comfortable with saying it and not feeling like the people pleasing portion of it because you're like, well, I don't want the person to feel like I'm no, it's no. I have to put my oxygen mask on first.
Yeah.
I'm
What a
gonna be no
driving
good to
message.
anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I'm gonna
mean,
be
what a
no
driving
good.
message for you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so important to just, I love hearing about just your recognition of what your capacity is and the boundaries that are needed. And it's actually about knowing yourself. And I think that sometimes, like, grief disorients you and then you're just like, do I even know myself anymore? But it is in through the embracing and learning about yourself through grief and allowing yourself to feel that you maybe become more aware of what your limitations are or what your capacity is. And so, yeah, I just appreciate you mentioning that because I think that that's super important as well. I'm wondering, you mentioned about being a spin instructor and also a degree instructor, and I'm just wondering if those are some of the ways in which you've healed and cope, not healed, but those have been ways that have helped you with healing and coping. And so knowing that, you're just never really healed from grief. But I'm wondering, yeah, which of your identities have really influenced how you cope and heal? Yeah.
Yeah. Leadership. Leadership.
Mm,
And I'll tell you this. I'll give you a I don't know that I'm doing these things, but I'm doing these things. And then when I sit down and I think about it as I debrief of the things, and I was like, oh wow, that you did something to
yeah.
someone. So I discovered running when I lost my sister. Like I needed an outlet. And so I went pre-COVID, I was running every half marathon there was. I was traveling, had a good running mate, and we were just traveling and running. Running and everyone's like, what are you running from? I'm just running. Forrest Gump just running. But it was just beautiful. Like the preparation to run a half marathon. Oh my God. You talk about that. That's a whole nother conversation. But
Yeah.
just also just leading and spin. And because I have work to do for myself in the grief space, how many other people are just showing up and just being themselves within that space? You know what I mean? And the little jewel or message I can give because I'm healing as well. Do I want people to think that their experience is my experience or mine's is theirs? No, by no means. That's not what I want. I think it goes back to what I was saying. You pick up what you need to pick up, leave what you don't. But if I can continuously lead in these spaces because I have experienced grief on very many levels, not only
Yeah.
losing my sister and my mother, but just childhood.
Yeah.
If I could share my joys, I'm going to say my joys that
Yeah.
or tools in my bucket that I've been able to help navigate it, I'm going to share those, because maybe, just maybe, it might be somebody that takes that and says, "Oh my, let me try that for myself." And
Yeah.
then it can help them get over the hurdle that they're in. So I try to be the light in every room that I lead in. And there's at times that I'm not the light and the others that are in the room are the light for me. And I exchange that energy. And
Mm.
that's why it's very important that I put my oxygen mask on, so
Yeah.
that I could be in that space of being able to pour out. And I'm only pouring out, darling,
Mm.
of what's extra out of my cup. I'm not giving to anybody. If I'm just at the brim, baby, I ain't got much to give. But if there's plethora coming out of it, I'm going to share that with you, because I got to make sure that I'm all the way in it for myself, because I'm depleting myself to save others. And that's not justice for you.
Mm.
And I'll keep doing that. I'll keep doing that. I'll keep doing that. If I'm running a half marathon and the gal is on the side and she's crying and she's at mile 5 and baby, we got more to go and she's crying, I pause. I stop. I am not trying to race the clock. I do want to sub too. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah.
But if I see someone in that moment that needs that, I'm okay with sacrificing those seconds to give that,
Mm.
because that's just who I am as a
Yeah.
human. So as a
Yeah, I
mother, it's
know.
still in me.
I know.
It's
I'm
in
like,
me.
I know. It really does. It pours and overflows from you, which I think is so beautiful. And I think you're dropping so many gems of wisdom and just knowing yourself, knowing your capacity, knowing what you can pour from, the portions that you can. I think it's really important what
Mhm.
you said about I pour from the part of me that is overflowing as opposed to like taking, and I know there is, I mean, we both know that there's a give and take. And so I also appreciate your analogy around I don't always have to be the light in the room. I think that also takes leadership, right? It takes
Yeah,
leadership to
right.
know when are you going to be the light and when are you going to sit back and let other people be the light as well.
Correct. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, totally, totally. And so, man, I love that. I love hearing that leadership piece of that, and I think that's really important for people to just know and recognize. I hear your, you mentioned running after your sister transitioned. I know that you mentioned that you went into a lot of half marathons and running,
Hmm.
and I know that mom, the ritual was maybe more around bringing her with you everywhere and letting her
Yeah.
experience the world because she didn't have a chance to experience the world, which I think is also just super beautiful. Part of, why I started this podcast was I was looking for rituals and traditions and ways of learning to hold and process my grief. And so I'm wondering if there are just, yeah, more pieces of that you'd be willing to share aside from like a
Yeah.
celebration of life. I feel like that's like what we're most familiar with, but then that's really at the beginning of your journey around
Yeah.
grief, and
Yeah.
then people leave, and then you're just sort of like, well, how do we acknowledge this and
Right.
honor this together? How do I honor it on my own, but how do I honor this in community? How do I honor this around other people, since this is like a communal loss too?
Right. So one thing that I do, I've shared this with someone before who has lost their mother. And there's this thing I do. I walk my dogs in the morning. So before I go teach my early morning classes, so I'm up at 4:35 and I'm walking my dogs. Summer times are beautiful because it's bright, it's bright outside. But I have this thing as I have conversation with my mother, and it doesn't matter what's going on. And I used to always think my neighbors probably think I am so whacked out of my mind because they see me walking and talking. But there's always this blue jay that's in my neighborhood. And so it appears out of nowhere sometimes. And I think to myself, well, maybe that's just a form of my mother kind of showing up. But rituals for me is just making sure, especially when I'm in high stress, I'm in a moment or something exciting happens for me and I'm in a moment, I'm like, damn, I wish I could call my mom and share this moment with her. So I make it a point that I'm talking to her. So I'm on my walks, I talk to her, these are the things that I'm celebrating, these are things I'm doing. There's times if I'm not in the mood to talk, I'll just jot it down in my little journal I have here. But I make it make sure I talk to my mother all the time.
Yeah.
It's part of my everyday walking my dog type deal. If I'm stuck on something, I can't get out of it, or
Yeah.
if I'm a new win in my life, I'm just like, I wish you were here to celebrate this. This is what's going on. This is what it looks like. And then just sitting in silence. My mother was a woman of, she just loved silence. And she'd always say, your home feels so sacred. It's so quiet. So burning my candles, baby, and playing my Drake.
You're like,
So those are
yes.
just rituals. It's just, I love stillness. I think that's the best time that I could get my racy thoughts, or if I'm feeling sad in the moment, I can get them. I always like to say, because it's like a heavy weight, I was like, just shake it off of me. You know what I mean? Because I don't want to walk around with my shoulders feeling heavy, my heart heavy in my hands. So the best way is just for me to go for walks and talk to my mother about it, or jot it down if I'm not in the mood to talk.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, because I feel like that really reminds me of just something that I have learned, even from my own therapy and healing, and then also that I could pass on and share to other people, that like that the relationship with your mom doesn't end with her death.
Mm-mm.
Actually, like a relationship takes two people, and you're still
Yeah,
living. And so
yeah,
that relationship still lives because you're also still living. And so,
yeah,
like, what does it mean to continue? The nature of the relationship has changed, and so what does it mean to like still exist in this relationship, knowing that the relationship has changed, and to be able to have conversations or be able to journal, or I've mentioned to clients and other people about writing a letter about things that
mm-hmm,
are maybe unfinished, that like just you wish you could have had that conversation, but you didn't have that conversation, but you're still here, so
yeah,
you can have your part of that
yeah,
conversation. And perhaps even imagine into, since
mm-hmm,
the other person so well, like imagine into what they might say about what you just said. But now, I mean, you're like, you can say whatever you want to say now.
yeah.
In
Oh,
different
they're gonna let you know, whether it's through some other form of something. It's just the most, I don't know. I feel like too, not that I wasn't super spiritual before my mother had passed or my sister passing. I just feel like too, I'm more aware. Like I feel like my discernment is much more, it's heightened to another level. And it maybe is because I'm leaving the idea of, or being open hearted about it to help navigate it. And I know for sure, out of this time of just navigating this deepest grief, because I feel like losing my sister prepped me to deal with what I knew what I was going to deal with losing my mother, but it didn't prep me to know that it was going to be the biggest heartbreak of my life. And that, oh, I got a little choked up.
Yeah.
It's like the biggest heartbreak that I want no one to join the club.
Yeah.
And you will never understand until, you have some girlfriends that are like in rocky spaces with their mother. And it's crazy because I always, like my mother would always say, we don't say goodbye, we say see you later. So I always keep that in mind. You don't end conversations on rocky ground, because you just don't know when that person may not be able to have life the next day. And so I'm so honored that my mother and I had rifts. Like my mother was a different type of woman. She was raised very differently, and I'm living a very different world and reality than she would ever imagine. And she made me always understand that. And
Yeah.
I've always met her where she was at. I didn't have an expectation for her to be this. Like my thing was is that she dropped out of high school. I knew that's the level I was going to have to meet her at, of her communication, her emotional intelligence. And she was in the streets for so long. When she passed away, she was clean and sober for 16 years. So she was just coming out of the streets. The streets didn't kill her. Her living, trying to live a healthy life killed her. So I've always made sure, and when I share with others, is that I don't care what you and your mother, your father, or whoever you guys got going on, just always leave space to say, I love you and I'll talk with you later, because you just don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And I'm so honored that my mother and I didn't have that. Like I couldn't even imagine though how much endearment and much love I have for my mother, and me just still being this little girl in her world, because I will always be, no matter what, of being in that state, because it's the biggest heartbreak. So just imagine having that heartbreak and then having to navigate that you didn't get to have those conversations. I don't wish that on anyone.
Yeah, it can be so complex. I mean, grief can be, I mean, we've talked about even on this podcast about compounded grief and complex grief and grief with estrangement and grief with just things that like are
Hmm.
complicated grief when there's abuse, all these different pieces too, where it's like,
Yeah.
ugh, and also navigating the different dynamics that happen in relationship and knowing that at least for you, I appreciate you mentioning like just leaving that space for acknowledging maybe the complexity of. I think that I've been learning about that this past year of just like how human our parents are, and which is like maybe a very obvious thing,
Yeah.
but I think you realize that as you become an adult child, and you're like, wow, like yeah, you mess up too, and you recognize
Right.
and yeah, you recognize that people are very very human, and so yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that.
Yeah.
I there's so many wisdoms already that you've shared through your grief and healing journey. I am wondering kind of the most important thing you've learned. If there's one, I'm sure there's so many, but I'm wondering kind of actually like in relation to the retreats that you're putting on. I'm wanting to learn
Yeah.
like about that connection between everything you've been talking about and experiencing around grief and healing and really like embracing that and then wanting to create this space for other people.
Right. Well, I've had this retreat thing in my mind for years, and I'm so honored to get a chance to have Poise Wellness have their first official retreat this October 30th to November 4th.
October 30th.
Traveling has been a way for me to heal, because I'm able to truly lean on myself when I'm out in these environments that I'm not
Yeah.
used to. And so while I've been traveling, whether it was Africa or India, or going to Dubai, or just taking my trips to Mexico, you get to a point, and it's just me, because my mother had passed away, and this is kind of creepy to say, like I knew when my mother and my soul separated. Was my mother died Valentine's Day in 2019, and I knew I was on a plane that day heading to go meet my partner, and my daughter called me, and I was so emotional that day, and I'm crying, and my daughter go, "Why are you crying?" I goes, "I don't know, I just feel so weird, and I don't know why I feel this way." And that was a time that my mother had passed away. So every time I get on a plane and me looking out, it makes me think of my mother. And it makes me reflect more in where I know I'm going, that's the time I need to sit and I think about her during that time. There's times too that I dream of her the most is when I'm traveling, which is the most weirdest thing for me. And I get to experience conversations with her when I'm traveling. And as I'm navigating this and I think about it, I said, I know that I'm not the only one that experienced things like this. And I think that it takes for us to leave out of our comfort zone to go into other places to help us process maybe what we have all in our body to release it. And so when it came to the retreats, I know there's individuals that can identify with what I experience, and it's just my duty to put it out there. And if it's for them to pick it up, they'll pick it up. If it's not for them to, they'll put it down. But the components of the retreat that I intertwine, I just think they're very, very important tools that we need to know as humans how to utilize to help navigate just emotions or grief that we're experiencing. Because grief could be a forms of many different things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the things that I offer in these retreats, in these spaces that I'm offering on these retreats, is that I want people to feel a safe place to land. I want them to be able. People are going to be shaky when they get there because not everybody's going to know you, everyone. But this gives them that thing to just put themselves out there, and no judgment zone, because everyone's there for the same purpose, right? But then also too, like I always say, is lean in. If we're not leaning in, we're not truly allowing to have an open heart and open mind to the possibility of. And so that's what I want to offer on these retreats. I want individuals to come to do. It is the becoming. You are undoing. You're coming so untethered. It's so connected to what you say, Dana, and that's why
Yeah.
I appreciate the
Yeah.
work you do. From day one, I'm just like, this woman's brilliant. We need women like you in these spaces. They're just humans, because we
Yeah.
just don't, especially as African Americans, we just
Yeah.
don't know how to navigate it. And
Yeah.
it's not about burnout. We could
Yeah.
totally go in and
Yeah.
coexist in the same space, but we have to do the undoing to reroot ourselves to become something. It just is like being a butterfly. So you have to build yourself up. Yeah, but I know I'm not the only one that has these type of things going on in my life, and wanting to know how to navigate grief, wanting to know that you can still be ambitious and you can still have your rest, everything coexists. You can still have all these things and these dreams, right? But what can I do to help curate a space? Because I want to be seen, I want to feel safe, I want to also get the restoration that I need to my life in the day to day so that I could be full, you know? And so with
Yeah.
that, I was like, how do we create this? What are the beautiful things that we all need? And I thought of you immediately, Dana, because I think that it's an important piece of life. It's a token to life that we all need to learn how to dysregulate and how to navigate and have some emotional intelligence and keep going, but also still feel, right? Because you can still feel all these things and be within that. But when do you create a pause to enjoy you? And so with Poise Wellness Retreats, I want to bring that. I want to bring an open spot for individuals to come to find a safe place to land, find a place where they can feel seen, of just coming wholly as you are. You do not have to be perfect. We are all working on something. And come with an open heart, an open mind, be fearless, and lean all the way in. And that's the only way that I feel like you will come to this retreat. It's called the Becoming Experience. So that's the whole point of it. You're coming here, you're untethered. You need to put your roots back in the ground. What does that look like for you? What does that feel like for you? Whether that's through sound bath, whether that's through movement of us doing Pilates, whether that's through a cacao ritual, whether through community and food, because the food is amazing, right?
Yeah. So fresh.
What does that look like? And what does
Yeah.
that feel like? And then two, building with other individuals that I don't want to do trauma bonding by no means, no.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
building and creating space for others, and maybe when you come, you are giving a gift to someone who came that was looking for something. So it's an energy even exchange. And so, sorry, that's my doggies.
I love it. They're
But
welcome
yeah.
here.
So I just want to continuously create spaces like that for humans. I'm going to say humans, to come to. And we have spots available. And I want to fill
Yeah.
them because I want everybody there.
Spots
Very
available.
limited, very few limited. We have two surf suites that we could fill, and then a penthouse. So I say 7 is the spots. I
Yeah.
say you come, bring a friend, because they are shared units, and I know sometimes we get in the space individuals don't want to share a sleeping unit. You are in your own bed. You're not sharing a
Mhm.
bed. But the beauty of it is when you come, you're coming to a space that you will be safe.
Mhm.
But you have to be open to the idea of learning something, bringing something to offer, something to take away, because there will be an inner exchange of it. And I would tell you, when I left that retreat last year, it pushed me to launch Poise Wellness Retreats. So I
Yeah.
came out of there every day. I could not stop thinking about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's all these things I want to do because I'm so ambitious. And I was like, I know we could do this on a grander level. I know we can get more
Yeah.
Black women in spaces that are just unfamiliar for us, and create a community. And I feel, coming from that retreat, there's individuals I would have never met that I have met, that I have community with. And so
Yeah.
I'm honored to
Yeah.
be able to offer that again this year. And I'm even much more excited to see the faces that are going to come, and the 6 days and 5 nights that we're going to retreat together and build.
Yeah. Yeah, you alluded to this, and so I just want to make it more explicit. So last year, you and I went
Mm-hmm.
on this similar retreat, and like
Yeah.
I wrote about this recently in my newsletter, but like my life was also like significantly changed. It's there's something to going to Mexico, a space that does honestly grief and honoring grief really well with ritual and tradition during
Yeah.
Dia de los Muertos. And, there's something to going to this land that really has ritual around it that does a lot of honoring, communal honoring. Like there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
ofrendas and recognizing the people who've lived in community amongst other people, and then people in the community also like go and acknowledge this person and bring their favorite drinks or bring their favorite foods, and those things are left in memory of this person, and
Yes.
it's so beautiful seeing an entire town honor all the people that have made up its town. And also, you are coming from a different country, literally, into this space and recognizing you bring also whatever you bring with you. And
Yeah.
so, inevitably, all of that stuff will shift and move things within you that feels like,
Yeah.
whoa, should I be honoring my grief in a different way? Should I honor my healing in a different way? And what is still left? And I know for me, I was thinking a lot about and have still been on a journey around living life more boldly and with more courage. And, I wrote about in my newsletter about how I am afraid of crickets because of something that happened when I was a kid. And yeah, and just knowing that, but I had this whole journey that happened, and realizing the lesson for me was like my fear had to die, that was honestly that, and it sounds bold, but that it was with that boldness that was like, wait, that fear has to die in order for other things to grow and live.
Oh,
And
it's
I
beautiful.
think that, yeah, I think it was in being in this space with other people who just were, and it wasn't just like, I think that was the other piece too, was just like, it's not just a serious retreat. So it's not going to be
Mm-mm.
always creepy. It was silly, and I think that
No.
was also kind of funny was that some people who were meeting me and only knew me either through Instagram or some of the stuff like educational content or workshops that I did were like, "Oh, Dana, like I thought you'd be really serious," and then realizing actually you're really silly and you actually are pretty funny. And I was like, I am. And so I was like, yeah. And I think it was funny just to realize people witnessing your being and
Yeah.
recognizing that like you are a whole person with all these different, I don't know, pieces of yourself that are just important and can be witnessed in community.
Yeah.
Do you have more to
And
add about
it's
last year's retreat that for you?
uh yeah, too, it was the one where we wrote to the postcard, and we wrote to our
Yeah.
future 6 months self. I it was interesting to see people was like, who sent these? It was like, you totally forgot about it. But to
Yes.
read that and everything in it that I wrote, I have done in 2026.
Mm. Amazing.
So I
Amazing.
say we put it out there,
Yeah.
it will come back to us. But we have to be open to the idea of, and you have to be open to the idea to shed the dead weight, the dead skin, and grow. You have to keep that open heart and that open mind.
Yeah, yeah. I will say that, like, for this retreat too, that, because it is also in partnership with Untethered to Rooted, like, it'll be a balance of like things that are sessions that are like educational, but also like we want people to have space to rest, right? So it won't be all scheduled
Hmm.
up. There will be things to do, and then there'll just be space to do nothing, because sometimes we need permission. We don't actually need permission. We need to be
Rest is
reminded. And sometimes,
resistance.
yeah, that like, we just
Yeah.
are doing nothing, because that's part of the retreat is to do
Yeah, for
nothing
sure.
but be with other people. And just to clarify too, this isn't just a retreat for Black women. Is that right, Laquana?
No, no, it's not. It's open. It's open to all. But I want people to come as they are. And
Yeah.
and if you're uncomfortable or have questions, just please make sure you reach out to Dana or I in
Yeah.
regards to it. But I think it's beautiful when we come we have people from all walks of life. It just makes a
Yeah.
big melting pot of experiences, and that's what we need in this world today.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
a melting
Yeah.
pot of experiences.
100%. I just wanted to clarify that point that like it was actually a bunch of, it happened to be and end up being folks of color from all
Hmm.
different cultural backgrounds, and it was great to be able to speak from those cultural backgrounds as well and hear
Yeah.
people speaking, and so that's really cool. Okay, I feel like I am at this question that I normally ask people towards the end of my podcast, which is kind of dispelling some myths that maybe people have around
Hmm.
grief and healing. And so I'm wondering, what do you wish people knew about this particular topic? This topic of just rest and ambition
Hmm.
coexisting
Hmm.
with grief and healing, and what do you wish you knew that you know now about that?
Let's see. That it doesn't have to be fast. It could be slow. It could be slow to the point of that you're literally, when you think about taking a breath and taking your breath in slow and then you exhaling out through your mouth slowly, that it could be that way. Everything is not, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to achieve this, I have to achieve that. Oh, everything is just slow and steady. I think the only way we get through our grief is by taking it a day at a time. Listen, I could be full of joy today and celebrate, and then tomorrow I could be down in the dumps and be like, yeah, today I'm going to lay in my bed. So honor yourself within those moments, listen to your body within those moments, allow yourself space. It's okay if you're on year 10 of losing someone that you're crying. It's okay if you're on day one and you have not cried. Just honor yourself where you're at, meet yourself where you're at, and go through it slowly. So that's the only way I feel like we truly embrace it, because we're just trying to, I just don't want to feel like this anymore, because you're going to feel like this for the rest of your life. And I share that with my friends, the girlfriend who lost her mother literally on Christmas Day. And she said, I was just telling everybody, I feel sad for my friends who have lost their parents, and then I lose my mom that night. And I said, well, you have to be open to the idea of it's not going to be, you're going to feel different every day. Just honor it. Sit in it, honoring it. We have to honor it. And if you don't and you try to fight against it, then you're going to be dragging yourself through the mud. Like, honor it and sit in that moment. And whatever you're feeling within that moment, allow that to be felt.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that that's just so powerful. You said of just, yeah, allowing your feelings to be felt and giving yourself time to pause, giving yourself
Yeah.
the space. I don't think sometimes we give ourselves that
No.
space, and I think that's so important. Is that something you would have told yourself as well, who was first
Yeah.
experiencing this?
Yeah. I felt like, going into my mother passed away, I went straight into grad school. And I literally worked full time, was in grad school, had a very regimented schedule. I was on Dean's List, so I was in grad school working my tail off and still
Yeah.
excelling at my job. And I did that. Grad school was 2 years. And I come out of grad school and I literally crossed the stage, got to the meeting area where everybody was at, and freaking bawled. Like, it's so much was released out of my body because I didn't honor what I was dealing with. I suppressed my feelings. And I thought just doing my day to day, making sure that I was getting my workout in. I still was storing all those things in my body that I didn't allow myself to release. And I got sick. Like, I cried that day. And then I was sick for like 2 weeks out of nowhere. I wasn't around. It was like flu-like symptoms, and it wasn't even the
Wow.
flu, you know.
Yeah.
And I got to, at that moment, Dana, I started grieving my mother. I
Wow.
started grieving my mother.
Yeah.
It's wild, because
Yeah.
too, during the time I was in grad school, COVID, so we were all locked up for a little bit too, and I was
Right.
in it. I was in it alone, so I started grieving my mother, and that's when I started just living within the moments of what I felt within that moment, going on my walks,
Yeah.
having my conversations, doing my movement, honoring it, always coming back to my breath at the end of the day, sitting in silence if I need to, telling people no, no, not, nope, not, however you want to say no, saying it. Nah, no, nope. I've been very adamant, I kid you not. I'm adamant about saying no to things I don't want to participate in.
Mm,
I'm making sure that I'm listening totally to my body, even to the point that there's times when I'm coaching and I'm teaching and I feel like even if it's that cycle is the time of the month, like I could feel literally everything that's going on, that I'm
yeah.
gentle with myself and I'm not trying to push myself beyond it. So
Mm,
just totally just like listening to what my body is
yeah.
saying to me. And I've
Yeah.
made promises to myself that I was going to do that. And I've been doing those
Yeah.
things and I feel good. So when I'm sleepy,
Mm,
I'm going to sleep. When I don't
yeah.
want to do something, I'm telling you no. Okay?
Yeah.
It's not going to work for me. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying out of a space to hurt anyone's feelings, but I'm just
No.
in the second leg of my life that I got to totally live my fullest. And I always say live limitlessly. And I'm always encouraging others. But what am I doing to encourage myself to help navigate those spaces? And I feel healthier because of that. Like
Mm,
you start, it's all kind of, I could go on and on. It's cortisol starts
yeah.
picking up. All these things start picking up when we don't honor our body because we're dealing with some form of grief or going into deep depression. And so I'm happy that I've done that. Even though I thought I was doing those things, it was at that moment that I knew I wasn't, because I
Yeah.
was so sad. I was so
Yeah.
sad. I just hit this major achievement in my life. My mother didn't get to celebrate that with me, and never even thought about grieving during this time of this, because I was so high achiever, so focused on
Yeah.
being the best that I can be
Yeah.
with
Oh,
without
I understand.
sitting
I
in
understand. Yeah.
it. So I would say that just sit in every moment that you get. If in that moment your body is saying cry, cry. In that moment, like I'm not gonna be able to go to dinner today. Sorry, I'm canceling plans. Then you do that. If you don't want to get up and work out that day, that is okay. But just meet yourself where you're at.
Yeah, yeah. And also, I mean, it's the flip side, just to come full circle, what you said in the beginning. It's also the things that are like, okay, now it's time for you to get out of the house. Now
Yep.
it's time for you
Yep.
to, okay, go on this trip. Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
now it's time for you to, like, yes, you've cried and I need you to lean into some living.
Yep.
So, what does
Yep.
it mean to live?
5 minutes of tears and that's all you get.
It's so funny you mentioned that. And part of that, I think we talked about it earlier, but it was like it's having a container, right? Having that
Yep.
container for grief. And I know for me, I had to like I was like, okay, I am losing my sense of time in grief, and so I was just like, I'd give myself 30 minutes and then I'd in the shower, right? And then I was like,
Uh-huh.
okay, like wash it down the drain. And then it was just like, once I get out of the shower, that is your transition to something different. And you
Mm-hmm.
are allowed to feel something different if there's space and something else there and it feels something
Yeah.
different for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, in those moments, Dana, we're not giving ourselves the space that growth is okay. Even though you
Yeah.
may have lost somebody and you're grieving, it is okay to move along. It is okay to grow from that. I don't think those individuals would want us to still be sitting where first of all, I don't want to be where I was at 7 years ago. I love where I'm at today. So I think those individuals will be extremely proud of us, of the growth that we have and the moving on that we have done. I don't think they will be happy to know that we're still sitting in that same spot from where they left us. So we have to be just open to that.
Mm. Oh, Laquana, thank you so much. Thanks. I just thank you for sharing so much of yourself. Thanks for sharing on this topic. I know it takes a lot out of you to be able to share sometimes these things, but I
Yeah.
also appreciate your willingness and the joy in which you share it, and also the honoring in which you share it too. And as we wrap up, I'm wondering if our listeners would like to connect with you, if that's okay with you.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
awesome.
Yep.
And so looks like the best way to connect with you would be, is it Instagram?
Yeah, Instagram is perfect. Life by Q. That's literally LIFEBYQ. That's where you get my crazy, quirky personality. But then you can get me also Poise Wellness Retreats as well. You will find all the retreat information, whether it's poisewellnessretreats.com as well. But follow both pages. You will get the best of me in both.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. Yep. So you heard it from Quanna, Life IQ, Poise Wellness Retreats. I'll put all of that in the show notes. You can catch all of that stuff there. Any other information, I'll also put in the show notes. Thank you so much, Quanna, again, for just sharing so much of yourself. I'm just ever so grateful, and I'm really excited to be leading this retreat and facilitating it with you in October.
I'm excited. Thank you so much, Dana. Have a beautiful day. A great day on purpose, I always say.
I love that. Have a great day on purpose.
Yes. Alrighty. Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Untethered to Rooted. Untethered to Rooted is produced and hosted by me, Dana Daugherty. Original music was composed and performed by the ever-talented Daniel Dickinson. Thanks so much to our guests for sharing with us today. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. And follow us on social at Untethered to Rooted. And if you didn't like it, what podcast? Dana who? Until next time, take and give good care.